observed, and of course coming down from the world of a large financial global firm that no longer exists, and also having worked in the commercial bank for a long time as well, I have a different perspective in terms of the evolution of everything that transpired. And I must say that it is an extremely frustrating process for me to try and bring these two different and divergent sort of points of view together so that they can be applied realistically and properly within today's circumstances. I am amazed, speaking as an American, how little, on the one hand, the operating entities in Europe understand what's going on with all of this financial and regulatory debate. And on the other hand, I'm also surprised as an American how arrogant the American regulatory system is currently today. They're trying, and I think the U.S. is trying to jump the gun in many respects on what are going to be these rules that Frank Dodd have actually announced or articulated from a broader principle perspective. But different regulator groups, be they federal, state, market regulators, or our own Federal Reserve, they've taken a very, I'd say, almost excessively aggressive approach where there is a sense that they have to try and preempt what may be the potential consequences and circumstances that, in fact, they don't really understand. I speak specifically about the question of whether Portugal, for example, is going to disintegrate and fall off into the Atlantic Ocean, and then what happens? So what are you going to do? And you've got to show us this, you've got to show us that. And it's an extremely interesting circumstance where, quite frankly, all of that history, and I'll take, again, a very personal, specific case of this institution, where it has been operating in the United States for over 27 years. And no history of either its financial health, its compliance record, its solvency, its performance, its management has ever been taken into context. All of a sudden, you're going to be looked at as sort of a potential entity that we're going to go after for all sorts of different reasons. And it is an extremely difficult thing to try and translate and put it or filter it through back to the European side, because they think the U.S. are first as being overly aggressive, presumptive in their conclusions, because you're sort of guilty first before you're otherwise deemed to be innocent. And third, that they have an attitude that the burden of proof is on you to convince us why our thinking is the way it is. So all of this about implementing the rules and having a dialogue between the future views of how the regulations are going to appear here and how they're going to be properly implemented, I think, are still very much up in the air, and I just cause a lot of confusion. And I think to the point that I believe Doug, you made, we're still in a financial crisis across the entire system at so many different levels. This crisis has not gone away. And we in this country still don't really understand the exact ramifications of it, because we're still digesting these imbalances between excessively levered institutions and highly overvalued asset classes. That still is going on an economic level, and it's going on a financial level, and from the standpoint of how you try and pull all these cows back into the barn, it's a very, very complicated process, but it's easy to pick on the smaller players. And so I think, in many respects, this is happening in a tremendous sense, both in the U.S. with the smaller players as much as with the Europeans. So it's causing a lot of confusion. And the reality as well is to sum up the cost of it. The cost of compliance, and to be able to actually respond to what is going on today and what will potentially come down the pipe from any institution is going to be very, very high. Legal fees, compliance departments, it is going to be quite a new industry for those who wish to either stay in the regulatory or supervisory world of government, or those who are looking to get degrees in law school without financial regulation. It'll be a tremendous field study. PhDs will be written, and there'll be tremendous job opportunities. It won't pay a lot because it'll be capped anyway. But at the same time, there's a whole new line of business within banking today, which is going to be compliance and regulatory supervision.
Well, the starting point for global regulatory reform really was the November 2008 G20 summit, and that agenda for regulatory reform was specifically set as a response to the financial crisis, which was the worst in 70 years. And so I think the sweeping nature of regulatory reform across jurisdictions really reflected the devastation caused by risks in the system. And so we heard today from a number of speakers in earlier panels actually calling for more safety in some cases to be built into the financial system. For example, through more central clearing of over-the-counter derivatives and putting in place new mechanisms for spotting and hopefully preventing the next financial crisis. What risks do you think remain out there from your point of view? And also with regulators struggling to operate with limited staffing, expertise, resources, technology, are you concerned that the lack of funding and staffing put in place will hurt their ability to stop the next crisis, protect the system in the future?
I think we all should be worried that the law of unintended consequences is being developed and discussed as we are sitting here today. But beyond that, if you keep looking at the past crisis as a guide or a means by which we're going to try and prevent the next one, I think we're deluding ourselves. Something will come about that will shock us into another direction in some form or another. But I think it is good that we're actually talking a lot more about what has been going on. And notwithstanding a lot of the disclaimers from the two representatives of the two agencies who are at this table today, I think it would be very helpful if the SEC would be much more proactive in the kind of public dialogue and discussion that you today, Brian, entered into, and not having to worry about whether what you say may or may not be held against you back at the office. There's a real need, and I think, again, it goes to the point I'm actually quite frustrated we didn't have someone here from the Fed, and I understood that we were going to have the Vice Chairman, Mr. Turillo, here. Because I think he's responsible for regulatory matters today. And it would have been interesting to have a view as to what he sees within the Fed's role as to how they're going to improve, maybe in fact even delegate some of their roles, because I don't know if the FDIC is going to duplicate some of the things that they're going to be doing and are doing. So we need a little bit more of an opening, a little bit of a kimono here of these agencies to come and talk to the market participants in ways that they can give us clarity, rather than, and this is not a strike against lawyers, but we always got to go and ask, how do you interpret the 850th page of the Frank Dodd law that says X, and then how are we going to plan against what is a highly open-ended scenario in terms of how these rules are in fact going to be applied, because the uncertainty around this is creating more and more uncertainty, lack of willingness to invest, lack of willingness even to cooperate in some form or another, because it then goes back to sort of what I was intimating before, a certain amount of arrogance in terms of how we wish to apply what are our rules. And a lot of those rules are just not really understood. The principles are understood, but then we have to articulate over and over and over. And what does it really mean? And yet, again, they come right now at you pretty hard if you don't exactly have it fits the box that's been detailed. So all of this is great that we're having the discussion about this. I think it's great that they're going to have the clearing initiatives, and of course, I'm speaking from a much smaller entity. But within Portugal, I would say, Espirito Santo is a significant institution that does not measure up against, say, to the other Spanish banks, for example, in terms of total asset size or size of capital. But it's working very hard and it will very well, I think, reach the Basel III objectives probably sooner than most institutions in Europe will. And even within a distressed and very challenged fiscal situation within its own country. So I think there is a very easy way to go about and just make broad-based conclusions. But we do still I think, need to have a lot more transparency discussion about how the regulatory agencies charged with implementing these rules are going to actually behave and what is the standard by which they're going to measure activity and performance. But the derivatives world is a completely different kettle of fish, and I think, yes, we should have a lot more discussion on that, and I'm glad to see that it's continuing. I think I remember Merrill Lynch's derivatives book was enormous. It was huge. Yet, you know, it was very interesting to see how regulatory arbitrage was being practiced within the firm at the time. It was just the reality of the world, but that's the regulatory environment then. Today, I think it's going to be a lot more rational, and I think hopefully better managed.
Can you give us a flavor for the bank stress tests that are coming up in June? And what type of regulatory actions do you think the results may precipitate? And also, what's the view from your colleagues in Europe as to the health of the financial system there? Because there are many financial institutions in the United States who are now exposed or feel that they could be exposed to any spillover effects from Europe. And this is a concern that the markets and also regulators here have been dealing with and coping with for the last year or so. But now, you know, the crisis ensues, it hasn't been fully resolved.
Again, you asked a personal question to answer. I think that ultimately the whole thing is really just pure, it's a political issue. And not to give too much of an advertisement to the Financial Times, but if you look at today's edition today, there's a marvelous cartoon of Merkel and Sarkozy flying this, ironically, Boeing 747 with a euro symbol on one side, and it's coming along, and they're looking out the window and they're seeing Portugal and Greece kind of hanging on because they're falling out of the back of the aircraft. You know, and, I think we are in the situation where the resolution and solution to Europe's fiscal problems are essentially political. And to look at how Greece is going to solve its problems versus Portugal and or Ireland. And unfortunately, the market has taken all three and just conveniently put them into the same basket. There's some very real significant differences between one state and another. And these are sovereign states. And they do have a public to which their politicians and political processes respond to and must answer to. And when we make categorical decisions about the fact that the systemic or potential sovereign risk is so great that we're going to continue to cut not only your ratings on the one hand, but on the other hand, you have limited access to other funding. And that funding becomes something where you ask yourself, well, wait a minute, we're doing everything right. We have no real asset problems a la X country or X system, but everything is transparent, you have all the information, but regardless of that, it still comes right back down to a convenient conclusion the market makes, because there hasn't been a political will to tackle the overall fiscal problem of the European, let's say, lack of integration on a principle of consolidating fiscal responsibility in today's reality. We go back to Maastricht, we make all these wonderful conclusions about what that was and what it should be. But if I look at that article today from the FT, and I was amazed to see that not until 2040 will Greece actually get to a point where it in effect become a Maastricht, validated, correct within certain guidelines of the treaty. So, but you're talking about a country with 12, 13 million people. You just don't turn around and say, well, write it off. You can't. And yet the Europeans still haven't come to a definitive conclusion of what to do about it. That's a problem. And viewed from here, I can see where if you're a private market participant, you're going to turn off the spigot as quickly as you can, or if you're pretty smart and agile, and you probably make a lot of money off it too. So this is kind of a long-winded answer, I don't really have one. Frankly, it's a very tough environment because of this lack of clarity from the political level of what Europe is going to do. And of course, we here assume that everyone is as healthy as we are, and we're actually pretty sick, fiscally speaking. I think S&P came out with a right and very courageous statement a month ago, which has given us some warning, and we ought to heed that warning as well. The sooner we get some political consensus around here, I think we're going to have a better position on which to articulate certain standards and hopefully bring together that harmonization everybody's talking about so that the market can get more clarity and where we can move on and in fact say we have learned lessons and are in a position today to say that we have a grow and grow in a prosperous, competitive environment that has a relatively equal application of the same rules and regulations. I mean, I just think that's basically what it comes down to. How do you apply the rules properly, equally, fairly, and with a proper level of dialogue and disclosure?
Well, I think that just to sum up today's event, all of your comments, I think, touch upon many of the points raised by our panelists regarding transparency, the need for implementing this law in the right way. But the key to doing that is ensuring that the right resources are also in place so that regulators can do their job. But then in the European side, you have this ongoing crisis, which I think will prove to be a case study as to the degree of European-wide policy coordination as well as global coordination, because the U.S. Central Bank has been involved with supporting liquidity facilities to address this crisis in Europe. And so on an ongoing basis, the momentum for coordination across the Atlantic remains more important than ever. And I just thank Ambassador Dobriansky and her colleagues at Thomson Reuters and you, who have been a very vital member of the Atlantic Council as Vice Chairman, and all of our speakers today for providing all of their diverse points of view.
Thank you very much.